Hi. Thank you so much for everyone's patience. We're going to jump into our talk about mastering text input in Compose. I'm Megan. I'm a developer relations engineer on the Compose team.
I'm Melba. I'm a software engineer on the Compose team.
And let's jump into it. So, for this talk, we're going to be working with a pet social media app to showcase these text APIs. So, as you can see, the app is beautiful. It's trendy, but the problem is it doesn't feel as good as it looks because it's not properly utilizing the robust text APIs that Compose offers. So throughout this talk, we're going to go screen by screen through, and we're going to add the new APIs to make this app feel amazing. But before we get started, I want to talk to you about the new state-based text fields. So this is our new best practice for text fields, and you're going to see it used so much during this talk. Here are some of the new updates on it. We've switched to a new state hoisting paradigm, and as you can see, we're using remember text field state for the state. We replaced on value change with input transformation for filtering content. And we replaced visual transformation with output transformation for formatting content. And then we also made it easier to say if it's going to be a single or multi-line text field. Okay, back to the app. So here's a registration screen that we have for the app, and it's a pretty standard registration screen. We have a username field, a password field, and a sign-up sheet. So what we're going to do with this is we are going to make it better by, one, we're going to hide the password while typing for security. We're going to have a password requirement so people don't make the password 1234. And then we're also going to save our secure password to the password manager. Can everyone still hear me? Yes? Medium? They can't hear me. What? I have no idea. Can people in the front row hear me? But people on the app can't hear me. Okay. I don't know. I'm going to keep going. Okay, so here's our username text field. As we can see, we're using the new state-based text field. So we have state defined in line, we have the line limit to a single line, and then we have a placeholder text of username. For the password text field, we're going to be using a new API called Secure Text Field, which is our new best practice for password text fields. Here are the key features that make it delightful. It hides the password by default and also disables cut and copy actions. So the implementation is very similar. We have the state defined, but in this case, we have it hoisted and then passed in. And then we have placeholder text of password. So now immediately, just by switching to secure text field, we already get the password that's hidden by default just by using the new text field. Amazing, exciting. So next we're gonna go into having password requirements. So we have our password state hoisted, and we're gonna toggle our buttons enabled based on if the text is longer than 8 characters. So in this case, our password requirement is password should be longer than 8 characters. I'm sure that all of you would have better password requirements. This is just simple for this talk. So in this demo, we can see that it does work. It's disabled and now it's enabled. But for a user perspective, it's not really clear what that requirement is. It's not clear why is it enabled, why is it disabled, I don't know. So we're going to add 2 things to make it clearer to the user. And the first thing is we're going to add a supporting text parameter, and that'll tell us what the password requirement is. And just to make it extra clear, we're going to put the text field in an is error state if the password's length is between 1 and 7. And now we can see that the text field is an is error state until it's 8 characters. We have the requirements showing, so it's very clear to the users, and there we go. So next we're going to chat about saving these credentials, and I'm going to pass it over to Melba.
Cool. Thanks, Megan. All right, let's talk about autofill. So we want to save credentials on our app. And to do so, Compose added in some new APIs in Compose version 1.8 that allows you to do this. Before we get into the API shape and how to use the APIs, just as a note, if you're testing this on your own device, what you'll want to do is to go into the settings of your emulator, your physical device, whatever you're using, and you want to enable autofill and choose a password manager of your choosing. In the example in the slides, you're going to see that we're using Google Password Manager, but you can use whatever password manager you like. All right, let's look at the code. So here you can see we have an outline text field, and this represents the username of our registration page. You can see that in order to enable autofill, all we have to do is add in this semantics on the modifier, and then we're going to have this content type parameter. So content type was one of the new APIs that we added in to support Compose. You can see on the screen there's a bunch of different hints that you can pass into the content type. So there's addresses, birthdays, credit card information, anything that you would associate with autofill. And basically choosing one of these hints tells the autofill system what type of data lives in the text field that you're using. So for example, if you want a phone number in a text field, then you'd set the content hint to be phone number. And that way the autofill service knows that any data entered into that field will be saved under phone number, and any data to be retrieved will also have to be saved under phone number. In this case, we're doing a registration page, so we're going to see new username and new password as our content types. In the code, it looks a little bit like this. So you can see in our username, we have content type to be new username. In our password, we have our content type to be new password. So this all makes sense, right? We're basically setting these content type hints to let the autofill system know that we're registering on this page. So any new information will be saved to the password manager. But how does the password manager know that the user is finished interacting with these text fields? We have to send them a signal to let them know that this context is finished. So we're going to do that by retrieving this autofill manager. We're going to call autofillmanager.commit in this sign up button at the bottom of the registration page. And this is the signal that's going to let the autofill system know that the user's finished interacting and all the data can now be saved. So this looks like something like this you can see on the screen in the GIF. Upon selecting the sign up button, you can see our puppy now sees this save password to Google Password Manager pop up. Of course, depending on the password manager that you're using, it might look a little bit different. But in this case now you can see all the new credentials are being saved to the password manager. All right, so now we've registered. Let's talk about logging in. We're going to add in a way to enable autofill in the login screen. And then we're also going to toggle the visibility of the password. Sometimes if you use autofill too much, you forget what your password actually is. And you might want to be able to see what the password is by clicking on this toggle icon in your password field. So let's talk about how to add those two features. All right, first thing we're going to do, enabling autofill in the login screen. You can see here, we have a username, we have a password, nothing crazy. These are the text fields that Megan was talking about before. We're going to do something very similar, adding in the semantics modifier on both components, and then we're selecting content type username and content type password as the hints. You'll notice that we're actually using different hints than the previous slide. This is because we're actually wanting to fill in credentials now versus saving credentials. Cool. So just adding in those content types enables us to be able to let our puppy to log in. So you can see now Google Password Manager asks if the user wants to use their saved password. Clicking into the text field enables this pop-up, and then credentials can be filled in. All right, let's talk about toggling visibility of the password. So we're going to do this with the text obfuscation mode APIs. This is a new API. This was added in Material 3. And it's usually meant to be used with passwords. So you're going to use this with secure text field most of the time. You can see on the screen there's 3 modes, right? So there's like a visible, there's a hidden, reveal last typed. All these are pretty self-explanatory. One thing I will say is in reveal last typed, you'll notice that the last character that the user inputs in is revealed. After a certain amount of time, that'll actually go away, and the last character will become masked. All right, so how does this look like in code? So let's say we have a password visible variable. Let's just set it to false at first. Inside the clickable of the icon inside our secure text field, so that's that eye icon that we saw on the previous slide, we're going to flip the password visible state. After that, we're going to set the text obfuscation mode based on the password visible variable. So pretty simple. We're saying if it's true, then the password mode will be visible. If it's not, we're going to use reveal typed. And this is all in secure text field. So you can see now we're able to toggle the visibility of the password. The icon's clickable. Clicking on it shows you the last icon because we're using the reveal last typed. Clicking on it again shows you the entire password because now we're toggling back to the visible mode. Okay, so we've registered, we've logged in. Now our puppy wants to chat. Let's say he's like barking, woofing, he's using all these texts with his pack, but he wants to express his emotions in maybe GIFs or stickers. Let's say he wants to use rich content. And let's also say he's a wizard with a foldable and he wants to use drag and drop to drag some photos in from another app into the chat screen. So how can we do that? So let's say that he wants to use GIFs from the keyboard. Let's say he wants to paste in images from other websites. And again, he wants to drag and drop in. By default, unfortunately, text field is not configured to handle this kind of rich content. I mean, it's kind of expected, right? It's like a text field. But we added in a new API called modifier.contentReceiver that you can actually use to configure your text field to receive all the types of contents that we talked about. So GIFs, stickers, drag and drop, all with one API. This is an experimental API, so the API shape and the naming might be subject to change, but the underlying implementation is considered stable, so feel free to play around with it to handle rich content. All right, let's see what this looks like. So in the modifier of our text field, we're just going to add in content receiver. And actually, the presence of content receiver is enough to let the keyboard know that GIFs are now enabled, but let's keep going. We want to process the rich content. So inside the content receiver, we're going to receive this transferable content object. Transferable content is basically just a wrapper around clip data and clip description APIs. You can read more about it in our documentation, but just think of it as a way to represent data that's in your clipboard. So if a user copies something, this is the data in their clipboard. So how do we process that data? We're going to step inside our view model. So here we're inside our view model. We're keeping track of two things. First thing is a message state, which represents just like the chat message state. Second thing is going to be this list of images that we're sending with the next message. So in this case, let's have a list of URIs. Now we're stepping inside our handle content function. You can see here we're taking in a transferable content object. We actually iterate through all of the clipboard data inside of the transferable content object. And we're going to use this consume method provided by transferable content. As we're iterating through, we're extracting all of these URI images and updating our selected images list. So now selected images contains all of the new rich content that we're going to send with our next message. In this slide, the code is pretty simple, but in production, you'll probably want to verify that the URI points to a valid image and all of that. But for the sake of this example, let's just keep going. Cool. So adding a content receiver now gives us the ability to send GIFs, stickers, all of that. But remember, we also wanted to use our foldable, right? We wanted to use drag and drop. So we're actually going to do that with the same API. We're going to use the same modifier.contentReceiver API. And one thing that you'll notice about content receiver is not really tied to a text field at all. It's not like something you pass into a text field parameter or anything like that. That's because it's just a modifier. So you can put it on anything that has a modifier. So in this case, let's pull it out one level. Previously, content receiver was on the modifier of the text field. Let's pull it up one level and place it on the box of the parent that contains the text field. So this is the box that contains the entire chat screen. And you might ask, like, why we want to do that. Well, first of all, adding content receiver on any parent of the text field still works as intended. And this is because text field actually traverses its parent hierarchy, and it looks for any content receivers on its parents. So in this case, content receiver is still working. The reason why we're moving it up one level is because the composable on which content receiver is applied serves as the bounds for the drag and drop zone. So let's look at this in the app because I think that makes a little bit more sense. If content receiver is on the text field modifier, then you see down there, the red box is where the drag and drop zone will be. That's okay, but it's not super big, right? So if we pull it up one level, now content receiver is on the box that contains the chat screen, and the entire red box becomes the drag and drop zone. So it's much easier for you to drag and drop in. And we did that just by moving the content receiver up one level to the parent, right? And this is all the same API, modifier.contentReceiver. Cool. So our puppy is chatting with his friends. I'm going to pass it back to Megan, who's working on something special.
Hi, everybody. So short. Oh my God, okay. Cool. So this app also lets you customize a collar for your dog, which is iconic. And here's what it looks like right now. So it looks kind of weird. Why is there so much empty space? Why is the phone number not formatted? What's going on? We're going to fix all of that with code. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to size the name based on the length of it. So to fix the name sizing issue, we're going to use auto size. And in the text, we're going to add the auto size parameter and set it to text auto size dot step based. And just by adding that, we like solved one of the issues. Like it's sizing based on the parent. You can see its size as it's typing. So if it was just Bubba, then it would be bigger. If it was just a heart, it would be bigger. But we can see that it's dynamically sizing, and it's just one line of text, just from that. So now we want to format our phone number. So right now, it just kind of looks like a jumble of digits. It's difficult to read. We're going to format this like an American phone number because I have an American phone number. And we're going to use input and output transformations, which I brought up at the very beginning when I was talking to you about the state-based text fields. So here's kind of like the flow of where input would go to then what user would see. And right now we're receiving input. And input could be from the keyboard. It could be from cut and paste. It could be from selection. It could be from a lot of places. And here are some example inputs. And for these example inputs, anything could be input. Just because it's a phone number doesn't mean that you can't get letters or special characters. It doesn't mean that you only get 10 characters. Input is input. Anyone could input anything. So what we want to do is we want to filter that input through input transformation. And the filters we'd like to apply on this are we'd like to only be 10 characters, and then more specifically, we'd like those 10 characters to be 10 digits. So we're going to do that through input transformation. So in the input transformation parameter, we're going to call input transformation dot max length equals 10, or pass in 10. So that'll give us our initial only 10 characters. Then we're going to chain the input transformation and add this so that those 10 characters are only digits. And so here on the bottom, you can see like after we have our initial input, after it goes through the input transformation, this is what happens. This is what comes out of our input transformation, out of our filter. So now we have 10 digits, and now the next thing we need to do is we need to format them through an output transformation. So for an American phone number, we have a opening parenthesis at index 0, a closing parenthesis at index 4, and a dash at index 8. For output transformation, we're going to be utilizing a text field buffer, which is kind of similar to a string builder. It has features that you can use to change things around, like insert, replace, delete, append. So we're going to create an output transformation class. And in that, we're going to call textfieldbuffer.transformOutput. And then we're going to apply the rules that we just defined. So if length is greater than 0, at index 0, we'll add an opening parenthesis. If length is greater than 4, at index 4, we'll add a closing parenthesis. If length is greater than 8, at index 8, we'll add a dash. And then we'll pass that in to the output transformation parameter. And so then here is the text field output. What I do want to really drive in is that the users will see the text field output. They'll see what the formatted text is. But the text field state will not reflect our parentheses and dashes. Our text field state will hold what the input transformation has. So if you called phone number text field dot value, it won't have these parentheses and dashes. It will only have our filtered input. And so here's what it looks like in action on the big screen. Yay, it looks like a phone number. We love it. And then here's what it looks like on the actual app. It's also taking advantage of auto size. And so through this talk, we talked about APIs like autofill, auto size, content receiver that you can use in your own apps to make your text fields more delightful, more usable, and more exciting. And we hope that you've learned something and had some fun. My name's Megan.
I'm Melba.
Thank you for sticking with us throughout the technical difficulties, and catch us. We'll be around all day.